This is Jonathan Ferguson, the Keeper of Firearms and Artillery at the Royal Armouries Museum in the UK, which houses a collection of thousands of iconic weapons from throughout history. And this week, as both you, Jonathan, and honestly myself are enjoying BattleBit so much, we're checking out more of the game's weapons.
I can't get over how detailed the weapons are in this game. Like, simultaneously not detailed and yet very detailed.
Let us know what other games or guns you'd like to see Jonathan break down in the comment section below, and if you enjoy this kind of content, let us know by liking the video. Right, over to Jonathan.
We've got a green rifle here now, despite the sort of deliberately limited color palette with some of the weapons here. This is actually realistic because if you know the AK-5C from Battlefield or from real life, it is substantially green. We don't have an AK-5C, but we do have an AK-5. So the C is essentially denoting that it's a carbine, hence the short barrel. This is the full length barrel, but other than that, it's the same rifle. This is a little bit old-fashioned, but the whole point of us having it is that it's representative of an in-service rifle from, well, when they first came in pretty much until early-ish 2000s. Just like all the other guns in this game, it's kind of low quality deliberately, but high detail. Lots of features on here that we can see on the real gun. So even the little sling loop here on the rear, even this, you can see the hook shape of how the buttstock interfaces with the rear of the receiver. Not quite as much detail as to be able to show you how this little catch here works, which you push to one side, and then you can see how that hook actually works. So not relevant to the gameplay, but the fact that it's replicated on the model is cool, I think. And then this is pretty well locked in place, so even the full-length rifle can be stowed in a vehicle or something. One other detail that's evident in the graphics here is the shape of the trigger guard, which is very distinctive on these rifles, and as I'm sure you either know or can guess, it's because it's an Arctic style trigger guard, given that we're talking about Northern Europe here, so that you can easily get your finger in there, but you're not at risk of accidentally, well, you're not at huge risk at least, of accidentally pressing the trigger. So this is the Russian SV-98 bolt-action sniper rifle. We've even got the scope covers depicted on the scope here with the hinge, with the lip around the cover presses over the rear of the scope body.
Since you liked the long shot last time, I was trying real hard to get an even longer shot, but I just couldn't do it with the two sniper rifles that I used.
That did look like a bit of a fluke shot.
I mean, I'm pretty good at shots about that range, but the comments were like, and I think in the clip where the developer says, oh, you can go up to like 2.2K or something, or 2,000 meters or 1,800 meters, just because obviously the graphics lend themselves to much longer view distances. And
yeah, Jesus.
I wanted to include some of the levolution of Steel Battlefield's term.
I will just say, obviously, this is not Cooling Tower Expert Reacts, but it definitely adds a dimension to gameplay when you're trying to take an accurate shot with your SV-98 and the side of a cooling tower collapses on your face.
So I've got a recon drone as the recon class to spot things, but my partner is putting anti-personnel mines on top of it. It's a tactic that's loads of people are doing on BattleBit at the minute, and you just drone the AP mines to the feet of the enemy instead of waiting for them to come to you.
Wow. Right. I almost feel bad laughing at this because something very much like this is happening as we speak and people are getting blown up and killed. But this is a game. And the idea of it works on two levels. One, it's inventive and fun and amusing because no one's getting hurt. But then it does reflect a reality where people are, obviously they're not just placing a mine on top of a drone. There's a lot more to it than that. But standard Mavic quad rotors are being weaponized right now. So that's the thing. Fun, interesting. I think my job is both, and I'm grateful for that. All right, well, first off, I just want to know, some people in the comments last time pointed this out. It turns out you can, in fact, recover your dropped magazine. So you can do it like a retention reload and keep that partially depleted magazine with the whole ammo management system that we talked about last time. But if you do that emergency reload, which in some games means that's just gone, here you can pick it up and collect it when the immediate emergency has gone away. So another little bit of realism there. So the rifle here, as it says, is a Honey Badger. This is from a company called Q, which has only just occurred to me might be a James Bond reference. I feel a bit silly for not having thought of that before. But anyway, American company known for the Honey Badger, and it's 300 blackout, so close-up terminal ballistic effect. Audibly more quiet. I assume that plays into the gameplay. In fact, I'm certain that it will. So people won't hear you coming as easily. In theory, it will be less effective at range with that short barrel, with the 300 blackout round, which is broadly equivalent to a 7.62 by 39 AK round that feeds reliably in AR-15 magazines without you having to redesign the gun. That's kind of the point of 300 blackout. I don't think this game is accounting for subsonic versus supersonic. If you watch some of the footage online where people have loaded both rounds in the same mag, or very audibly, there is a change from a supersonic crack to no supersonic crack, and therefore almost just the noise of the bolt cycling with a slight pop behind it. So I think the gameplay bears out my impression that this is basically how the thing should work in real life. Controllable, quiet. It's not just there for cosmetics or variety. It fulfills a tactical niche. So if you don't know, the AK-15 is the AK-12 in 7.62 by 39, and they've got the correct curvature of magazine fitted, so that's as it should be. Minor negative points for looping the sling around the weapon. It's not something that soldiers do, or at least that soldiers should do, because it gets in the way, and you should be using your sling, really. And then we've got blue tape wrapped around the mag, we've got orange tape wrapped around the grip. Yeah, I'm not a fan of it, even in a game like this where the graphics are not the focus. I'll just say I always enjoy any game where semi-automatic fire is worthwhile. Like sometimes it's included as an afterthought and you can do it, but you get penalized for it. And it's pretty clear from the gameplay footage that semi-automatic fire is well worth it at distance. You may well switch to automatic fire because it's still quite frenetic compared to typical experience of combat. There's a lot of CQB, at least, put it that way. The assault rifle as a thing, the Sturmgewehr, was invented for CQB, essentially. Storming a trench, storming a position, whatever. And that's what it's still used for if it's used. Okay, an unusual light machine gun, the Ultimax 100. And we have one. We have two, in fact. This one has the drum magazine fitted on it, exactly the same drum as you see in the game, in fact. Magazine catch is on the right-hand side. So if you were thinking they haven't put enough of a rocking action in that animation, you'd be wrong, because if I offer this up entirely flush, in fact, it has a guide rib here, like a Thompson. If I put that bit in the rail, that's supposed to help you guide it in, and you literally just push it in and it latches in place. So it's much more like an AR-15 setup. Ours is a vintage one. It does have, though, did basically from the start have this dovetail side mount, so you could fit an optic to it. And the great feature of this, which I'm not sure is quite represented as it could be in the game, is how little recoil there is in this thing. Because this is working on what's known as constant recoil, which is essentially where there's enough real estate in the receiver here, and it's properly buffered and designed, such that the bolt never hits the back of the receiver. There is always recoil, but the impulse is so smoothed out that you don't get that muzzle rise. So I'm still seeing some cumulative muzzle rise from automatic fire here that really probably ought not to be there. I haven't noticed this with anything else, but it seems like the SVD. Now, this is an SVD-M that's being depicted here, which we haven't got. So that's a rail top cover, folding buttstock, and black plastic or polymer furniture. The thing I'm furrowing my brow over is I'm pretty sure I saw someone take 2 headshots before they died from this thing. And this, don't forget, this is shooting the 7.62 by 54 rimmed round invented for the Mosin Nagant in 1891, still in use today with the SVD series, with the PKM series, and it is extremely powerful. And really, there's no way to not die when you're shot. Even with a somewhat ballistically capable helmet, even if you manage to survive, like it hits the helmet that doesn't happen to be where your head is, if you see what I mean, which does happen sometimes, the amount of momentum transferred by that bullet is still it might even do you a neck injury. It's certainly going to be enough of a thump to actually make you go to the floor. It's not going to physically knock you down, but there'd be more of an effect than that, and most likely it's going to cause you some serious injury to the point where you really are down, if not dead. So 2 shots to the head from a full bore rifle, but that seems a bit inconsistent with the other guns in the game.
The thermal sight was actually pretty interesting in this one.
Oh yeah,
I've implemented that. You can toggle it, and it lowers the frame rate of the actual sight. And you'll see later that it actually struggles to look through smoke. And I know that's sort of case by case, but if the smoke's hot or the smoke's cold, then it will block it, and it does do that to an extent.
Wow.
And there's like its own battery and stuff that it balances things out. But
its own battery.
Yeah, so you see at the top.
Oh yeah.
Thermal mode, it's sort of dying quite quickly as a balance thing, and then you see me sort of looking through smoke, and it's not highlighting the enemy.
I don't think I've ever said my word in my life, but this has just got an "oh my word" out of me because that's so impressive. So the rifle here is the AS VAL, as it says in the game. Interesting Russian design, suppressed. I'm sure most of you know something about this from gaming, if not from studying this. But what I'm interested in is the scope here. Now, again, I'm not an armor player or anything, but I've never seen a realistically implemented thermal scope in any mainstream game. And yet this is by far more realistic than, say, the thermal scopes in Call of Duty. So they're basically thermal all the time. You can't toggle them to a normal view, which you can in this. And the fact that there's a battery involved. Now the battery is running down faster than I would expect it to run down in real life, but I don't mind that because it's using a real thing, a real limitation of the actual piece of kit in a game environment to place a limitation on it. So you're going to have to budget your use of the thermal mode. Dave's correctly spotted there is a frame rate change as well, which is something you'll see in thermal technology is improving all the time. Some of the current stuff is pretty incredible for a price, but typically thermal optics will have a lower frame rate. Same issue as running high-end graphics on whatever hardware you have. It's because it's having to process a lot of information, essentially, it's effectively a lower frame rate. It looks, now I haven't ever used a real thermal sight, I only have seen people do it with recorded footage, but this is better than a AAA game has ever done a thermal scope. This is the Russian OTS-14 Groza. We do actually have 2 of these relatively recent acquisitions. This is the modernized form, and unlike all the Grozas I've ever seen, it's fitted with the straight magazine of the 9A91, which is it even has that index number on the magazine, which is a different rifle entirely. In fact, if I'm correct, it was a rival design to the Groza. So all of which is to say that it is different to the one that's depicted in the game. Oh, there's also a sight rail on this modernized Groza as well, of an unusual pattern that's been riveted to the left side there. Still has that AK upper handguard on here and an AK style top cover. Basically everything else is the same. When installed, this replaces the trigger mechanism of the rifle and allows you to switch. You have to press in and then turn between rifle and grenade launcher, which is actually represented in English letters here. So as is safe semi-auto on the receiver. So this is an export variant, which I think is interesting in itself. But it does change up the look of the weapon, so that the gun in the game is just the rifle variant, as is both modernized and has the grenade launcher up front, which means it also has flip-up grenade launcher sights. Very fortunate to have this, pretty unusual.
What made me laugh about when I was customizing the Vector, like I wanted all the bells and whistles, the drum magazine on it, I put the Hair at Arms foregrip on, and I think it's scaled to fit the Vector, so it's like a very tiny Hair at Arms grip.
Okay, that's weird.
See in the side view, it's just like, might even struggle to fit your thumb in.
Can I just point out the irony again of a game that is not focused on super whiz-bang graphics, getting the proportions of the Vector correct when Call of Duty has it very wrong.
I should note as well that the developers are aware of the unique recoil system in the Vector, and they have said outwardly, we have chosen not to include it because of balance, because otherwise it's a laser beam.
Interesting. Now, well, in my subjective experience a decade ago, the only real significant thing that you would implement would be the 2-round burst. So that there might be a way around that there to give it a unique capability that isn't absolutely game-changing, where automatic still requires technique, which it does. It's mitigated, but it's still, you know, the sheer amount of cumulative force of multiple rounds still tends to lift the muzzle off target, so that doesn't change much. But the 2-round burst, if that's implemented at all, and if it is, it can be really high rate of fire, and both rounds will strike the target. So there's an option there. To be fair, they sort of have implemented it insofar as 45 ACP at that rate of fire, which I think is right, it imparts significant recoil to your shoulder, your hands, everything. So the fact that you can control that as well as you can suggests that there might be something going on there, even if it's not been actively implemented.
Maybe I'm just a pro gamer, Jonathan. Didn't take that into consideration.
I think we knew that, Dave. Certainly a lot more so than I am. There we go, guys. Those were more guns from BattleBit, which has been very popular, the episode and the game. I'm keen to get my hands on it. Still haven't played it, but Dave is an avid player, as you can probably tell. So, as always, please do check out our Royal Armouries YouTube channel, social media, our physical museums if you can. And remember to like and subscribe on both channels if you can. And we'll see you again next week.